should reopen.
Besides, there are all the other arrangements to be
sorry,
made.
Mother, but I really can't let that sort of
And
thing
then
stand
there's
in
the
my
question
way.
of the journey.
But
too.
Uncle Arthur will be there. Sarah.
Have you heard the latest?
Tony Bishop's contracted jaundice.
So now there's no best man.
When did you hear?
Just now. He's in the military wing of Pancot General.
And he was there 3 weeks at least, so it's a blow. Of all Teddy's friends, Tony Bishop strikes me as the most sensible.
You can't change the date. What are you going to do?
Unless you call it off.
Mother? Best men are 2 a penny. Right, I'm going up to area headquarters to put a call through to Teddy.
Susan, you can't.
Why not? It's not just personal, it's a crisis. Dickie Bove will get through for me. Shan't be long.
I am holding on.
Hello, hold on, please.
I'm through to HQ Mirat.
I'm putting you through to Captain Bingham now.
They're putting Teddy on the line now.
Oh, thanks, Dickie.
That's fine.
Hello? Hello, Teddy, is that you?
Susan, quiet. I say, what's going on?
Tony Bishop's ill. Yes, he's got jaundice. So there's a panic on.
Jaundice? I say, that's rotten. What are we going to do?
The thing is, Teddy, you'll have to find someone else. And PDQ, or Mother's going to say the whole thing's off.
Oh, Lord.
Are you there, Teddy?
Well, it's a bit of a tall order, isn't it? Finding a new best man.
Well, you'll have to think. There must be someone who can hold your hand in Tony's place.
Hold on a bit.
All right.
Matter of fact, I think there is. Easy as a wink, old thing. I'll ask the fellow I share quarters with. He's a helpful and willing sort of chap. Just leave it all to me. Listen, don't worry your pretty little head about a thing. Everything's in hand.
Well, we haven't got much time.
I know.
Teddy!
You mustn't worry.
Hello, Mrs. Layton. Teddy. Things are looking up. You're only 25 minutes behind schedule. Hello, Sarah. Gosh, you look wonderful.
Darling.
Teddy, you haven't met Susan's Aunt Fenny and Uncle Arthur, Major and Mrs. Grace, Teddy Bingham.
How do you do?
How do you do?
I'm here to give the bride away, they tell me.
How do you do, sir? Well, I've got breakfast organised. I expect you're famished. Don't worry about your things. Noor Hussein's got the luggage bando tamed. Well, if you follow me, I'll steer you in the general direction of the station restaurant, which is pretty good. Cornflakes, porridge, eggs and bacon, and all the trimmings. Everything's on. Right.
After breakfast, one can face almost anything. We're lucky to be here, you know. If the wedding had been 1 week later, Arthur simply could not have come. No, thank you.
That's all right then, Mrs. Grace. Saturday it is.
What about your best man, Teddy?
All fixed. I asked the chap I share quarters with, and he said he'd be glad to. He'll be along after breakfast to help me run you over to the guest house. His name's Merrick. I hope you like him.
Merrick? It doesn't ring a bell. What is he?
G3I.
Arthur, wasn't there a Merrick on General Rolling's staff in Lahore in 31? It could be the same family.
It wasn't Merrick, Fenny. It was Merrick. Merrick wasn't the solely girl.
Well, then I don't know a Merrick. Is he an emergency officer?
He got an immediate commission, I gather. He was in the Indian police.
That's unusual.
I should say.
What rank? My dear boy, I gathered that when you said he was a G3I. His rank in the police.
Oh, that. Superintendent, I think.
In what district?
He did tell me. Is there a place called Sunday or something?
Oh, Sundanagar. Oh, a backward area. Quite unimportant.
His first name's Ronald, by the way. He's checked things over at the guest house. The Nawab's put it at the station commander's disposal, so you'll have it all to yourselves.
Shall we see the Nawab?
Why should you want to see the Nawab?
Because there's a scandal about him. He fell in love with a white woman in Monte Carlo.
Oh, did he? Who tells you that?
I did. But I thought everybody knew. The woman was a Russian emigre. It was quite a cause célèbre. The Nawab had to be rescued by this Russian count called Bronowski. And afterwards, he brought him back to India as his prime minister.
If he's really a count, I'll eat my hat.
The Nawab's been under his thumb ever since.
You still haven't answered my question, Teddy. I know once Aunt Fenny starts, it's difficult to get a word in edgeways. I asked whether we shall see the Nawab.
Well, Colonel and Mrs. Hobhouse, that's the station commander and his wife, say we ought to invite him to the reception. But it's not certain he can come.
Because the reception's at the club?
Oh, he's allowed in as a guest, you know. No, because of Ramzan. I mean, he'll be fasting.
Oh, I should like to have a Nawab at my wedding. Especially one who used to be wicked.
Ah, there's Ronald now.
He might even bring me a wedding present. A few spare ropes of pearls.
Quite a good-looking man. Well, not public school, of course. You can always tell. Ah, you get some peculiar people in the police. I don't expect Captain Merrick's family would bear close inspection. But he's quite the little gentleman, isn't he? And very attentive over detail. Did you hear him tell Teddy the luggage had already arrived at the guest house? So he's been there. How shall we go? You and Susan and Teddy in one taxi, me and Arthur, Sarah and Captain Merrick in the other?
No. I'll go with Sarah and Captain Merrick. And I'll feel less like a mother-in-law.
I hope Arthur isn't going to keep us hanging about as usual.
The cars are over there.
Mother would like you to come with us. Teddy's taking the others.
Yes, I see. Shall I lead the way? Right. We'll follow on. Happy?
Isn't that what the bride's supposed to be?
It is the general idea, I believe.
Well, then I am.
Miss Layton?
I want to ride in front, Captain Merrick. You go in with Mother.
Raj Mahal, Coachallo.
I think I've covered all the drill for the day itself. The chaplain's name is Fox, by the way, and you'll be meeting him later on. We're coming to the church now. Idara histi chalo. Mem saivan gurjaga dekna chata hai. There'll be a small party at the club later tonight to introduce you to Colonel and Mrs. Hobhouse. I think that's about all, Mrs. Layton. Except there's a young fellow who's distantly related to the Nawab, whose job it is to see that you have everything you want. His name is Ahmed Kasim, the son of Muhammad Ali Kasim, the chief minister in the provincial government of 1937 to 39.
But isn't he locked up?
That's the point. I mean, it's something to remember when dealing with young Kasim, that he's not in the least the type of westernized Indian who thinks he's a cut above the rest.
Oh. We promised to be well behaved.
I beg your pardon, Mrs. Layton, I put it clumsily. The point I intended to make was that Kasim's an attractive fellow, but it's as well to treat him cautiously. It would be unnatural if he didn't resent us a bit.
We probably shan't have time to let it worry us.
No. Ah, there's the palace now. You're looking in the wrong direction, Miss Layton.
I'm not looking in any direction. Well, there's so much glare.
And that's the guest house. The chap in the scarlet turban is Abdur Rahman. He's head bearer. And the little fellow holding his topi, his name's Abraham, Christian. And yes, there's Mr. Kasim.
So Mrs. Layton drinks, you say? You mean in secret?
I don't know about in secret, but she starts first and finishes last, and has 2 drinks to anybody else's 1. I've also noticed her behavior is erratic.
Her husband is a prisoner of war in Germany, you say? Mm-hmm. And her sister, this Mrs. Grace, is she also erratic?
No. She is perfectly predictable. You can depend upon her to be rude at any time.
Oh, dear boy. What have you overheard her saying about you?
Seems I'm quite efficient for an Indian. I would also make a good maître d'hôtel if I didn't stink so abominably of garlic.
I doubt if Mrs. Grace would know a good maître d'hôtel. The English seldom do, but she meant well. And you do.
I mean, you must admit, Mildred, it's easier if a man has parents. All there seems to be in Teddy's case is a father in the Muzzy Guides who broke his neck hunting, and a mother who married again and died in Mandalay.
Oh.
What is it, Pet?
Have you any aspirins?
They're on the dressing table. It's not for Susan, is it? You know, this is a very awkward time for her. I've just been praying.
No, Aunt Fenny, it's not for Susan. It's for me. My headache. Susan's lying down and she's absolutely fine. I've taken 2. Thanks.
Well. Well, what? I suppose she finds all this rather strange. The wedding, I mean. After all, Teddy was quite keen on her at one time, wasn't he? I don't think Sarah was ever keen on him.
And the girls? Are they more to your taste? Tell me about the younger sister. The Miss Layton who isn't to be married.
But she isn't the younger.
Ah, that is always interesting. I imagine she isn't as pretty. Or perhaps more serious-minded.
She asks a lot of questions.
Oh, is she so very plain, then?
I find all white girls unattractive. They look only half finished. But she is better-natured than her sister. Is that dangerous?
Why?
I understand it can be. This kind of English person invites confidence. But it is a trap. One wrong move, one hint of familiarity on your part, and snap, it shuts.
Are you sure you mean English, not white? Am I dangerous?
You are the most dangerous man in Mirat. Everybody knows that. One risks everything just talking to you. But I meant English, not white. If it had been subjugated by the Russians, I would have said Russian. It is the position of the English as rulers that makes them dangerous.
The trouble is, I can't exactly put my finger on it. The trouble is, I don't think Sarah quite believes in it. Us and India and what we're here for. She questions everything. And of course men don't like that. Well, you know it's true.
And your father? Have you kept your promise to me and written to him in prison?
No.
Oh, why not?
Same reason as always, there isn't anything to say. And every word would be read by somebody else before the letter reaches him. It's very off-putting. He's used to the idea I'm a disappointing sort of son.
Unlike your brother?
Possibly.
It's because you're too fond of him that you don't write to him. You shouldn't be afraid of your emotions. It's un-Indian. All this Western sophistication plus the cult of non-violence is utterly unnatural to you young men. The result is emasculation.
Well, what am I to do? Raise an army to release the prisoner in the fort at Premnagar?
You could do worse. The English would respect you for it. Can you stay to dinner?
No, I had a sudden invitation from Professor Nair.
What's he up to?
Nothing he tells me about.
Perhaps you don't listen hard enough. Nawab Sahib expects to be kept informed.
Is Nawab Sahib going to the reception?
He will if I say so. I think I shall say so. What are the arrangements for tomorrow?
They're going shopping. But in the morning before breakfast, Miss Layton wants to ride.
Which Miss Layton?
The inquisitive one, Miss Sarah. I'm expected to ride with her, I think.
You should tell that to Professor Nair.
Why?
He will be able to advise you more satisfactorily than I how to deport yourself out of the vast fund of his experience. One more thing. Try to find out about his visitor.
Has he got a visitor, then?
Yes, two. One, a woman not identified. The other, an elderly scholar by name Pandit Babasar. He comes from Mayapur and is not unknown to us in Mirat. Have you had enough whiskey to see you through an evening of fruit juice?
He is writing a commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. Please don't offer to shake hands and don't sit where your shadow will fall on him. It's all rather nerve-wracking. Frankly, I came out to relax.
Can I keep my socks on?
Oh, by all means. The flow gets so dirty. Come. Meet Panditji. Like me, he's a great admirer of your father. This is our young visitor, son of our illustrious MAK and social secretary to the Nawab Sahib.
Most people say I resemble my mother rather than my father.
Why do you answer in a foreign language?
Because I speak Hindi rather badly.
Do you not feel shame to speak always in the language of your father's jailers?
No, I'm not ashamed.
I do not know your father in person. Only I am admiring him from a distance. It is a face, after all, much known in newspapers.
Is this your first visit to Mirat, Panditji?
Oh, no. Panditji was at one time living in Mirat, but for the last few years has been in Mayapur.
Yes, I see. Then you were in Mayapur during the riots?
What riots are you meaning?
The riots in August last year.
Since you are knowing English somewhat better than I, perhaps you will correct me. But a riot, according to English dictionary, refers to violent, unlawful actions. I remember only spontaneous demonstrations of law-abiding people to protest against unlawful imprisonment of men without trial. When you speak of riots, you are speaking as the English speak. You must speak like an Indian and think like an Indian.
Since you were in Mayapur, Panditji, perhaps you knew that English girl, Miss Manners.
You have some personal interest in this matter?
No. But when one mentions Mayapur, you automatically think of Miss Manners and the rape.
It is not established there was rape. Only there were arrests.
You mean the whole affair was invented?
Simply, I am saying that to speak of the rape of Miss Manners is to speak of something that is not legally established. No case was brought to court. The men were imprisoned for so-called political offences under Defence of India rules.
Did you know any of the men?
Yes, I knew. They were boys of some education.
Did you know the one who was friendly with Miss Manners?
You are speaking of Hari Kumar?
I think that was his name.
Once, when he returned from England, his aunt sought my assistance to teach him Hindi. He also spoke properly only English.
And you're sure he was arrested for a crime he had not committed?
Mr. Kasim, I think you are not listening to what I'm telling you. No charge was made against these boys. Simply they were tortured and defiled in order to get them to confess. Some were whipped, and they were forced to eat beef. You are Muslim, I'm sorry, but they were Hindus. District superintendent was interested only in punishing these boys, especially Kumar, because of his association with the white girl. District superintendent was an evil man, Mr. Kasim. His cruelty and perversion were known by his men, which is how we know of them. It was one of his own Muslim constables who whispered the truth, because he was ashamed of what had been done.
And are they still in prison?
All are in prison. but not, I think, together. Kumar alone is in the Kandipur jail in Ranpur. Now at last his aunt is permitted to write and to send some books and food. I know these things because I am in her confidence. She was very fond of her English nephew, as she called him. You say nothing, my friend?
Oh, but I was listening with a great deal of interest.
It is the sort of case our young friend's father would eagerly have taken charge of when he was practicing the law. But it is not only in the courts that justice is done. You look hungry, Mr. Kasim. Let me not be keeping you and Professor Nair from your supper any longer. I shall retire before you finish, so you must allow me to say good night.
Good night, Panditji.
Good night.
Thank goodness. We must eat at once. A remarkable man. But one's routines get so disrupted. Do you mind vegetarian? It's the smell of the cooking. One has to think of everything.
Not at all. There's something I wanted to ask you advice about.
What's that?
I'm going riding tomorrow with a young English girl, Miss Layton. Count Bronowski told me I should consult you on how I should abort myself.
Oh, my dear fellow, that's quite simple. One stays behind. A few paces will be sufficient. One stays behind.
Mr. Kasim, it's funny. I've never once heard the muezzin since I've been in Mirat. And yet there are all those minarets. Why is it?
The wind's been in the wrong direction, I expect.
They do call then?
Oh, yes, they call.
5 times a day?
Five times a day, yes.
Will the Idul Fitr prayers be said in the mosque or outside?
Outside. Why?
I read somewhere they're supposed to be held in the open air. Why is that preferred?
Because of the crowds, I expect. The idea is wholly practical. But I'm no kind of authority. Perhaps the Imam at the Abdul Karim Mosque would have a different explanation.
Do you think we dare gallop?
If you'd like to.
Where to? That ridge?
There's a nullah between.
I don't mind nullahs. I enjoyed that. Is Count Bronowski really a count?
Yes, I think so.
Suppose it's time we started getting back.
Yes.
Mr. Kasim, do you come this way? When you ride alone?
Not very often.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Sometimes.
She just sneaked off.
Oh, Fenny, what is wrong with you? My daughters don't sneak off. They go. They don't have to ask permission.
You're becoming impossible to talk to sensibly. I mean, you know perfectly well why it's unwise for Sarah to ride alone with an Indian of that kind.
What is Mr. Kasim's kind, Aunt Fenny?
I'm sorry, I didn't know you were there. I was saying I thought it unwise for you to ride alone with Mr. Kasim.
Yes, I agree. It was unwise. We shan't go riding again. what happened. Nothing happened. I meant it was unwise because it made us both self-conscious. It wasn't until we actually set out I realized it was the first time I'd been alone with an Indian who wasn't a servant. He only spoke when spoken to, and kept almost exactly the same number of paces behind from start to finish.
He's a nice enough young man, and I understand his brother's an officer. These days, one really can't tell what these young Indians are up to, let alone thinking.
Perhaps they find the same difficulty with us.
Well, yes, perhaps they do. But we have other responsibilities. To establish a relationship with Indians, you can only afford to be yourself. Let them like it or lump it.
The King honoured the 4th Indian Division when he inspected, in the inner quadrangle of Buckingham Palace, the contingent which is now visiting this country. Colonel Scott, who commands these splendid warriors from India, presents them to their majesties. Talking to them, the King and Queen heard again about some of the exploits which won the division glory in Libya and Tunisia. Subadar Lal Bahadur Thapa, who had the ribbon of the VC pinned on his tunic by the King during his Majesty's visit to North Africa, now receives the actual cross.
What was that? Are you all right? What the hell was it?
Sahib, it is a bomb.
Yes. Did you see who threw this stone? I saw no one, Sahib. There was a man on the cycle in front of the car. He went that way. I'm sorry, Sahib. It is not auspicious.
You're damned right it isn't. For God's sake, Ronnie, is there any blood on my uniform?
No. That'll sponge out. Let me have a look at that cut.
Ouch!
May need a stitch. May have glass in it.
Christ, there isn't time.
You can't get married like a bleeding stuck pig. Come on. Don't sit down on a splinter, whatever you do. You'll really be in trouble. Look, when we get to the church, I'll root out the chaplain and use the phone to get a doctor. It'll mean putting the service off for a few minutes. Drive quickly to the church.
The bloody bastard. Whoever it was. Bugger him and bugger the Nawab. And bugger his bloody limousine.
Why?
Well, it's obvious, isn't it? A crest on the door as big as your ass. A bloody invitation to some bullshit to heave a bloody great rock through the window.
Has a substitute car been sent?
It was offered but declined, Nawab Sahib. Captain Merrick insists the damaged car is perfectly serviceable.
Has the Chief of Police been informed?
Ahmed has telephoned him, Your Highness.
Will he think to contact the military police, or will he rush about the city making absurd arrests? Who is this Captain Merrick?
The best man, Sahib. The name seemed slightly familiar. Some other context, perhaps. The ceremony and the reception have been postponed for half an hour, he told me.
A stone, you say? Please sit. I'm afraid I do not understand this incident of the stone, Dmitri.
No, it is a puzzle.
It is 10 years since the stone was thrown. Do we understand correctly that the culprit wasn't apprehended?
That seems to be correct, Nawab Sahib.
Then it is unlikely he will be caught.
No, very unlikely.
One man isn't usually responsible for such an incident. Several decide, one acts. What is important is why the stone was thrown.
Or to put that another way, Sahib, at what? Or whom?
Very well. At whom, then?
Well, as Your Highness says, it is 10 years since a stone was thrown. A Muslim subject would not throw one during Ramzan. Your Highness's Hindu subjects are content. Ergo, the stone was thrown not at the car which bore your crest, but at the occupants. or one of them.
Who were?
Captain Merrick and Captain Bingham.
British officers.
Due to leave Mirat next week for special training prior to active service in the field.
And our guests.
Beg pardon, sir. Captain Bingham is not a guest. He's the groom.
That is worse. It is a great mischief. They have given me a beautiful gift, the poems of my kinsman Ghafoor, and we reply with a stone. What am I to say when I meet them? That they have Mirat's hospitality, but not Mirat's protection. I shall want a full report.
It will be as full as possible. Your Highness can only express your regret. Or your Highness might add that you are astonished and pained that such a thing should happen in Mirat. Even last August, there were no anti-British demonstrations here. The police have been active in smelling out agitators and sending them back where they came from. The incident of the stone this morning is therefore a mystery. If you're ready, sir, I think we should go. In the circumstances, it might be a proper gesture to be at the reception early rather than late.
Very well.
Hello, Mrs. Bingham. I wanted to say it first.
I couldn't stop shaking. Oh, darling Mummy, did it show? I felt everybody could see. I was crying.
Bless the bride.
Still, it sounds funny. Susan Bingham.
Oh, you'll get used to it. Anyway, you'd better. Come and sign up.
Just right, Your Highness.
They will observe, Dmitri, that I do not waste my riches on my clothes. But they may think that you are the Nawab.
Oh, no, sir. They will see that I am but Bronowski. I was here must dress to do honor to the state. But you are the state.
I'm sorry, sir. Let's ask you to wait.
His Highness the Nawab cannot be kept waiting.
Special security, sir. There's been an ugly incident.
Yes, we know. Tedious. But Your Highness may consider this serves some purpose. The disrespect to Your Highness perhaps will cancel out the incident of the stone.
Yes, that's true.
And I have remembered something. On the way here in the car, the name Merrick, and what it means to me.
I've been here for about 4 weeks now.
Oh, yes.
Miss Layton, excuse me. Have you seen your mother and uncle?
Mother was here a few minutes ago. Why?
Well, I think they'd better be found. One of the MPs brought me this. I'm afraid he stopped in the wharf coming in.
Stopped him? Why?
I suppose because he's an Indian. I have to go and stop putting it right. But if your mother and uncle could be found and asked to come, I'd be grateful.
I think I can probably find Major Grace if you'd scout around for your mother.
I'll try and keep him happy in the anteroom.
Actually, we are delighted with Wavell's appointment as Viceroy. Though Tom says that with Dickie Mountbatten running SEAC, a lot of the top brass in Delhi are going to have...
Sorry, Mrs. Hobhouse. The Nawab's arrived.
Oh, my dears, down tools fly. He's an old dear, but terribly hard-going. I do hope he'll think the red carpet's for him.
I'm afraid he won't. He's been refused entry.
Refused entry? I don't understand. My dear, whatever do you mean?
Well, the MP stopped him coming in. Captain Merrick's gone to find Uncle Arthur, and the secretary wants us in the anteroom.
But he can't have been refused entry. Well, surely they were warned. Now, hold on. This is our job. You stay here with Sarah, and my husband and I will bring him out to you. If it really has happened, then this is club or station business and not yours. You stay here on the lawn. Susan and Teddy are here. We'll smooth his feathers down and bring him out to you.
I think Mrs. Hobhouse is right, Mother. Come on.
What happens now? This is turning out to be one of the most jinx-ridden affairs I've ever been mixed up with. Where's Fenny? I swear half that gang on the terrace are ordinary members of the club just muscling in. I warned the contractor, Wally, he won't get a penny over the quotation. He's making a packet as it is. You say, cheer up, Mildred.
What?
You look half asleep.
I better warn Susan and Teddy.
Aren't we going to the anteroom?
Mrs. Hobhouse thought it better if we stayed here, and she and Colonel Hobhouse brought the Nawab out.
Good idea. I say, isn't that him now? Must be. Extraordinary. Looks like some downtrodden munchie.
That's Count Bronowski, with the eye patch. He's supposed to have been blown up by a bomb in St. Petersburg. But unkind people say he lost that eye peeping through keyholes.
Mrs. Layton, His Highness Nawab, Sir Ahmed Ali Ghaffur Kasim Bahadur.
How do you do? I'm so glad you were able to come.
Mrs. Layton wishes me to tell you how deeply she appreciates your kindness in making the arrangements for herself and her family at the guest house.
Yes. Indeed. Your Highness, may I introduce you to the bride and groom, my younger daughter, Susan, now Mrs. Bingham.
Thank you for coming to my wedding.
Edward.
How do you do, sir? Grace.
He was very pleased with the book.
Oh, yes. Ghaffur, I'm glad. It was a bit of luck.
What was a bit of luck?
The poems of Ghaffur. Just something we bought for the Nawab. Someone we met in Kashmir told us Ghaffur was a kinsman of his. We wouldn't have known otherwise. What did Ghaffur write about? Roses and moonlit gardens, jugs of wine.
That's Omar Khayyam.
No, it's just Persian. I mean, they all wrote like that.
Roses and deserts and moonlit gardens pretty well fit the bill from what I remember.
Did you have to learn him as a boy?
Read would be more accurate. I never learned anything my teachers thought important.
I know what you mean. I never saw the importance of anything I was taught. I was the sort of child who asks why the cat sat on the mat. My teachers said I shouldn't exhaust my curiosity on the self-evident.
Then you're in the right place. In India, nothing is self-evident.
Actually, that's something I feel bound to disagree with. I'd say things that are self-evident are common to all countries.
What's been going on?
Nothing's been going on, Aunt Fenny. The Nawab's arrived.
Well, I know that. People are saying he had difficulty getting in. After what a chapter of accident. I've been putting out Susan's going away things. I can't find the hat box.
It must still be in the car. I'll go and see.
No, I'm sure Captain Merrick won't mind. The hat box. We think it's still in the car, the one Sarah and I came in.
Yes, I know where it's parked, Mrs. Grace. I'll check. What shall I do with the box? Bring it to you or take it to the annex?
Well, if you bring it to me, well, whatever you think. So long as it's found. God knows what they'll do if it's not there or been stolen. There wasn't a servant in sight in the annex just now. Anyone could have walked in. Come, I must meet the Nawab.
Bronowski, may I introduce my sister, Mrs. Grace?
Most dear Mrs. Grace, delighted to meet you.
There you are, Captain Merrick. Performing another of the onerous duties of best man.
It's just a hat box.
You're a man for detail, I can see, like me. Was it confetti? You are married?
No.
Neither am I. They say it's significant. Tidy people are always trying to wipe the slate clean. I'm sorry about the incident this morning. You were not hurt yourself.
No. Apart from the scratch on Captain Bingham's face, the only damage was to the Nawab's car. Is there something you want, Count Bronowski?
Yes. The answer to a question. But the question is impertinent. I hesitate.
Please, don't.
Well, I have been wondering if you thought, perhaps, that the stone was thrown at you.
Why should you wonder that?
Mrs. Grace has just told me you were in the Indian police.
That's quite true. I'll shoulder the responsibility if it helps you to explain the damage to the Nawab's car.
My dear Captain Merrick, you totally misunderstand the reason for my waylaying you like this.
Yes, well, I realized it wasn't a chance meeting.
Quite so. I came to look for you. Surely, you are the Merrick who was district superintendent of police in Mayapur last August, at the time of the riots and the rape of the English girl, Daphne Manners.
How do you arrive at that conclusion?
I deduce it. My deduction is correct. You are that officer?
I see no reason to deny it.
Good. You see, my conversation with Mrs. Grace led to a small gaffe on my part. She mentioned that you had been DSP in Sundanagar, which I take now to be the district to which you were transferred after the Mayapur affair. I was surprised. I said, but surely he was the Merrick who was DSP in Mayapur at the time of the riots and the rape. I'm afraid she was intrigued. I thought it only fair to have a word with you before you returned.
It's a bit of a nuisance. It can't be helped.
The notion came to me so very recently. On the way here in the car, I remembered the report I had from Mr. Kasim on Thursday morning. And suddenly it rang a bell. Tell me, does the name Pandit Baba mean anything to you?
As a matter of fact, it does.
Please tell me what.
He's a so-called venerable Hindu scholar who incites his young disciples to acts of violence against Muslims, against us, against anybody the Pandit disapproves of, and never gets caught himself. In Mayapur, I couldn't lay a finger on him.
Then you'll be interested to know that Pandit Baba is in Mirat.
And you believe he was behind the incident this morning?
Oh, I think so, don't you? Not that we should be able to prove it. But he is in touch, my spies believe, with very many people throughout India.
Aren't you exaggerating?
Am I? Was the stone this morning the first evidence you've had that you have been carefully tracked down since leaving Mayapur? To Sundanagar, perhaps? Even Mirat?
It may be as you say. Doesn't bother me. This is their last opportunity. They can hardly follow where I'm going. Unless some sepoy has been bribed to put a bullet through my head.
I don't think killing you is the idea. As you say, Mirat is their last opportunity. The wedding ceremony would have proved an excellent background for something colorful, but they have given us only a stone. Tell me, did it pass through your mind, I wonder, that acting as best man might bring your persecutors out into the open?
No. It was the other way round. I agreed to be best man and then realized I was probably the worst possible choice. All this is something I prefer to forget. I'm sorry you've identified me.
Oh, my dear fellow, why? If I've correctly judged Mrs. Grace's reactions to my unintentional disclosure, you are now an object not only of interest, but of admiring curiosity.
Huh.
But we must go back.
I shall have to, I'm afraid.
I'm sorry to have kept you. If you're ever in Mirat again, I hope you will let me know. We might have a longer chat.
Of course.
We may find much in common. Would you, for example, describe that young man over there as beautiful?
Yes, I think I...
Well, it doesn't matter. Come, let's go in.
He was in love with her. A woman from Mayapur told me it was well known at the time. Must have been awful for him when she became infatuated with one of those Indian boys. I mean, this woman said he looked positively ill when Miss Manners was assaulted. He can't have liked Count Bronowski remembering it all. Did you see his face when he got back with the hat box?
Stop it, Aunt Fenny. Stop it. I'm trying to pretend that this is a nice day. I'm trying to remember I'm being married to Teddy.
My dear child.
We've got 15 minutes, Mummy.
What have I done? Nothing, Fenny. It's what you were saying, not doing. Hardly a suitable subject in the circumstances, was it?
Oh, dear, yes, I do see. Oh, poor pet. What are you looking for, Sarah?
One of the buttons came off.
Dude, I'll find it. Millie, you pack the dress away and let Sarah get on with her own changing. All the same, he must have been nearly out of his mind when those men got away with it. I told Count Bronowski you'd been moored next to that extraordinary woman's houseboat and heard that revolting baby crying. It's like an Indian slum.
Aunt Fenny, I just don't understand you.
Here it is. Millie, put it in your handbag. What do you mean, Sarah, you don't understand?
You're still talking about that manners business.
But Susan can't hear.
That's not what I mean. You're quite prepared to gloat over all the details. Every last juicy bit. Well, I was in that slum, as you call it. I spent a whole hour talking to that extraordinary woman. I even looked at that revolting child. Of course it wasn't a slum, and the baby wasn't revolting. Though I'd agree about Lady Manners. She isn't ordinary.
You went to see her? What for?
To apologize for us. Perhaps the rest was just curiosity. Like yours, Aunt Fenny.
Did you know about this, Millie?
Yes, I knew. Sarah told me afterwards.
And did you approve?
I told her to keep it to herself. Does it matter now? May we just concentrate on getting Susan safely on the train?
Well, you astonish me. Really, you do. Apologize to us? My dear child, sometimes you worry me. You worry us all very much.
Yes, I know. I worry me, too. Shall I put Susan's veil in my case? There'll be more room.